Hello and good morning, and welcome back to another episode of Big Talk. We bring you college sports with Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I am Sam Sprunger, and this week it's not Dalton. It's going the other way. It's Tony. Tony, how in the world you get to fill in yet again for Dalton missing for another vacation?
I know. I feel like he and I just kind of swap vacation days at this point. Like I don't know if you found them, but Dalton and I found the magical concave that is the secret, hidden vacation days, and we honestly just kind of flip flop at this point. So
yeah, I'm used to it.
Or maybe it's like
whatever.
Or maybe it's like Batman and Bruce Wayne. Like, you ever notice you never see the two in the same room together? One is just always gone.
Neither of you are Batman, nor are you Bruce Wayne. So
there is no proof of that. You have no proof if that is true or not.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. Well, agree to disagree. Lots to talk about this week. We've got a lot going on. It's June 2nd, Tony, and the deadline for staying in the NBA draft or going back to the school if you had eligibility for players passed yesterday or on the 31st. So midnight on the 31st you had until 11:59 and 59 seconds or whatever. As soon as it clicked over to June 1st, you had to have your decision in. A couple of big names. I know that we talked about Boo Buie coming back to Northwestern, making Northwestern a little bit more of a contender for next year. Keisei Tominaga is coming back to Nebraska, and don't get me, I'm not placated or trying to drum up. This one was interesting because I think he validates Nebraska a little bit more and gives them more of an opportunity to be that mid Big Ten team for next season. I think he brings that scoring capability, that just shooter mentality, and that I think it really does keep Nebraska in at least a spot to where they can do a little bit more damage than they did last year. Say it that way.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's one of those, Nebraska was one of those. They were 16-16. They were 11th in the Big Ten, but they were a team that honestly they were in it for the most part in every single game that they played. Nebraska, they weren't a team that you expected to roll over, but they weren't exactly a team either that you took, that you didn't take lightly. It was
for the second straight major sports season. They went into Iowa City and beat Iowa in a time that Iowa needed a win.
Yeah. So
Nebraska, like they're not going to be the world beaters, like you said, but they're going to be just in everything, I think.
Yeah. And I will say, I watched him too. And last year I was watching him just rain down threes on people. And I'm like, wait a minute, who is this kid? Who is this kid that Nebraska
took the Big Ten by storm, kind of.
Yeah. And it's one of those, I feel he out of the Big Ten, because of how much talent is really kind of everywhere in the Big Ten, he's one of those guys I would say is more under the radar, because unless you're a big Nebraska fan or you're like, you, Dalton, and myself that really watch Big Ten basketball, you're probably not going to pay much attention to him unless your team is facing him, or like I said, unless you're just a Big Ten fanatics like we are as a whole.
Right.
So I feel like he is one of those. He's very talented and just flew under the radar pretty much the whole season, even though Nebraska's got a gym there.
Right. And I'm kind of along the same lines, and I may have been even a little bit later to the party, honestly, that I'd heard people talking about him, and I still didn't really pay much attention because it was still Nebraska, and then all of a sudden I caught, some highlights, and I'm like, oh, I really need to pay attention to what this dude's doing. And is he the best player in the conference? Absolutely not. He's not at all, but he is a very good basketball player who brings a big spark to a team that can do some things. They're not going to probably contend. Of course, we didn't think that Northwestern would last year either.
No.
But, they're just not that. Nobody's going to forecast Nebraska to be in the top 3.
Right.
Especially with the other news, the other returning back to school, They're not going to be. I still think that the Big Ten's basically a 2-horse race, and nobody thinks Nebraska is going to be there, but they're still going to have added firepower. They're going to be that much more dangerous when you play them, because Keisei is back, and he literally is crossing the half court line and looking to see where he could take a shot.
Yeah. And honestly too, he's technically a junior. He'd be going into his senior year. He's only gotten better. I mean, 21 to 22, he averaged about 6 points a game, which isn't great. He has 84% from the free throw, 37% field goal, 33 from 3-point percentage. And that's increased a lot. Like, he's gotten significantly better. His field goal percentage this past season, 50%, 3-point percentage, 40, free throw is almost 87%. And he was getting 13 points a game. So, I mean, he's doing something to obviously improve his game, and it's showing extremely well on the court. So yeah, I think he's one of those, like you said, is he the best player in the conference? By no means, but he's a very solid player that I think for Nebraska, they absolutely need.
Well, to look at the possibility and potential of what Keisei Tominaga is, from February 1st till I think March 1st of last year. So basically that last month leading up to the conference tournament. Okay. So that time frame, I saw a graphic that and this was nationally.
Yeah.
Okay. The top 3 scorers were in the country in their games were Keisei Tominaga, Zach Edey, and a guy from out west. I don't remember. I think it was a guy from San Diego State, maybe. Like, they were the top scorer in that time frame.
Yeah.
So he kicked it into gear when it was needed, and I would think that was his coming to age. Basically, he's going to only be better next year. Don't get me wrong. He's not going to be able to take people by surprise as much as he did this last year, but his talent's there. So if he's working on how to maintain his shot while being covered more, or being able to run through picks, I mean, he's got his aspect to work on that may make him just as effective, just in different ways, and he's one heck of a shooter. He's a scorer. He doesn't just shoot the 3 though. He can drive and take his defender to the hole. Yeah. And he can make some circus shots too.
And much to your point, when you were talking about, February 1st to March 1st. So this supports it on ESPN stats. So more from February 5th to March 5th, they went 6-2 in that stretch of games. The 2 lowest scoring games he had 11 points, both wins. He was against Penn State, 30 points, Michigan 24, Wisconsin and Rutgers 22 points, Maryland 20, Minnesota 11, Michigan State 20, and then Iowa 11. So I mean, he was putting up tremendous numbers for a guy that, probably not a whole lot of people had heard of prior to this season, unless they were a Nebraska fan.
If I had heard it in passing. I hadn't heard like a piece where somebody was actually talking about him in particular.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I'm excited because I mean he brings in more depth to Nebraska, and it honestly, it just makes it more interesting because you look at how Nebraska is, like we talk about with being blue blood, and a lot of people mainly think about football, but I mean, Nebraska basketball is also really good because you got to think about it. Nebraska fans are some of the most diehard college fans out there for any sport that Nebraska plays.
Yeah, and they haven't historically been as good as their football team, but you always, even though they're a football blue blood, you always go, oh yeah, they do have a basketball team, and they've done decent things in Lincoln, and I think Tominaga coming back can only help their program next year, and I think it's a good thing for the conference. Now, the other one that we had brought up slightly more is Zach Edey announced that he is also coming back. He's going to join back with the Boilermakers, try to do something that you don't see often, a repeat player of the year. Now, I'm not going out and saying, oh, well, he's got it in the bag, because Oscar Tshiebwe was also the player of the year, and he came back last year and didn't do poorly. But Zach Edey had a really dominant season, and he's coming back. What are your thoughts on this? We've kind of talked about it the last time that you were with us, or you were here, because we knew it was coming. We knew that deadline was coming. He still had some time. I do believe we both thought he was coming back. So does this surprise you in any way?
No,
at all?
Not really. Because kind of like we talked about, this is a guy that he didn't really start playing basketball until later on in life.
Sophomore in high school, I believe.
Yeah, he doesn't have a whole lot of technically, basketball to his name, but he does. And it showed this past year when he earned player of the year that he's only gotten better. And to be honest, too, it's not like he's going to be hurt whether he goes in the draft or whether he stays. He's still going to be considered one of the top draft prospects going into the NBA, whether he goes this season or whether he goes next season. It doesn't really matter. And honestly, there was something else that somebody brought up that I thought was a really good point, is he can still make quite a bit of money just through NIL. So, I mean, it's not like he's missing out on millions of potential dollars.
Caveat that he can't make his money. He's got to get his work visa changed enough to where he can pull in a certain amount, but there's something that is preventing him from going and making, $6 million or whatever. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily would, but since he's foreign born, there is something that's preventing him. And I can't remember, I saw that he made just under $1 million this last year, but it wasn't the same as if, like you and I, who were both born in the United States, were in college, we'd have no caveats that were keeping us from earning. But since he's on a student visa because he's foreign born, there were some things that kept him from maybe collecting as much as he could. But he's not going to be hard up for cash, I think, is what you're kind of getting at there, to where, he's not, it's not going to be one of those where he's living on ramen every week, every day, because that's all that his meal plan pays for, or, can afford. He's going to be able to, have whatever he wants. But,
well, not only that, but I mean, this just continues. It'll still keep him in a national spotlight to the point where, even after he finishes college, he'll still technically be here on a visa or something different. I'm not sure how any of that works, so I'm not going to try to speculate. But he'll still be able to get all sorts of offers, brands, sponsorships. He'll be the face of a lot of stuff. So it's not like for him he really has to worry. It's honestly just continuing to build off of what he did last year, continuing to build his name. So I think he'll be fine. All honesty, kind of like the last time when we talked about it. I do hope he bulks up a little bit more. I hope he really puts in the time, this off season to get a little bit bigger. And I know we talked about kind of working on some small mechanics, but like you said, he plays the center position probably better than anybody and is able to use his height to his advantage. So
I don't know if you saw the videos, but they were showing him at the combine shooting NBA length threes. And
no, I did not.
Actually hitting a decent percentage of them.
Okay.
Now, how many times is he going to get a wide open look like that after he starts draining some? Hardly any. Yes. Because unless all of a sudden he develops one heck of a very good first step to get around people, you just have to be in his face, and I'm not discounting him at all. It's just the sheer size that you've got to have a strong first step, because if you don't, they're going to be able to get right up on you and know that you're not just going to blow by them,
Yeah.
So it's not just as simple. And I think I talked about this a little bit before was, even if you do develop an outside jumper, or develop a more outside jumper than what you have, let's say it that way, you've got to have some versatility to where you're getting that first step explosion. Because if you don't have that as a potential, then the defense is one dimensional. They don't have to worry about you getting by them, Yeah. So if they can disrupt your shot from 17 feet out, that's even better, because you're further away from getting the rebound, and so It's, and I'm not saying that he can't develop, and I'm not saying he won't develop. I'm not saying he won't have a really good season next year. But honestly, I would honestly, if I were not necessarily a betting man, because I'd only bet when I'm pretty positive it'll happen, but I wouldn't be shocked to say that maybe his point totals go down because of what Purdue has coming in next year.
Yep.
They have Miles Colvin, who's Roosevelt Colvin, who played football at Purdue, then played with the Bears, and then won the Super Bowl with the Patriots. But his son's coming in as a freshman, and then William Berg is a redshirt freshman who is 7'2", not nearly as built, but he is versatile and can dribble, drive, can shoot the three. So it's possible that you see Zach Edey's numbers decline a little bit. That's not saying that he's going to have less of an effective season, because I still think he will be, but I wouldn't be shocked to see those numbers come down a little bit, because there's more that can do the scoring for them, you know?
Yeah. I agree. And I think it's also one of those, while we probably saw it last year, just people weren't effective with it last year because it's hard to game plan around something until you really face it and have to do with it head on. It reminds me a lot of whenever you see NFL, professional contracts. Once you see that player get that big money contract, people start playing against them a lot differently than what they played when they had a breakout season the season before. So to me, just because of now Zach Edey's name is going to be out there even more than what it already was. He was, unanimous player of the year. People are going to be playing him significantly different and a lot harder than what they were playing him last year.
Which may open up the doors for the others.
Exactly. So I agree. I think his numbers will go down just because of, like what you said, not only other talent that's going to be coming in to help subsidize, but just the fact that people are going to play against him a lot harder. Coaches are going to be scheming against him twice as hard as they were last year.
It's not going to be that he's having a down year necessarily. No. It's not going to be necessarily things that he's not doing as well. It's, hey, others are up in their game, and Purdue's probably going to be a better team this year than they were, amazingly, than last year.
And like most coaches, you learn to adapt, and you learn to overcome, and face those things head on. So yeah, I agree 100%.
I'll be interested to see what Dalton thinks, but we kind of talked about this, that without Edey, that we figured, and while we're talking, can you look and see about AJ Hoggard? Sure. We talked about the fact that without Edey coming back, we still thought that it was Michigan State and Purdue 1 and 2, probably Michigan State ahead of Purdue.
Yeah.
But we also said that if Edey came back, I think we flip-flopped him. I wonder if we're still on the same page of, I still think that, but I'm wondering if it's still the same page.
It might be. So AJ Hoggard and Jaden Akins both withdrew their names from the draft.
So they're both back in. Aiken did come back. Okay. I thought I'd heard Hoggard was coming back, but I wanted to make sure. That's why I asked you. And Aiken did say he was coming back too. Yes. So that makes Michigan State even stronger as well.
Yeah. The only person that won't be coming back by the looks of it is Joey Hauser. That's the only other big name last year for Michigan State that won't be coming back.
Yeah, and they're adding stuff.
Yeah.
So much like Purdue, they're not losing a lot, but they're adding some pieces that make that, it's going to make that one game that they play at Mackey Arena very, very interesting. And I know it bothers Dalton a little bit that it's at Mackey Arena instead of at the Breslin, but because they have, I think he said it's been 8 or 9 years since the Michigan State's gone into Mackey and won, and even then it was a struggle. So
yeah,
it's gonna be an interesting season because of the pieces that both of those teams are adding. And you know what, there's going to be a dark horse somewhere. There is always a dark horse team that comes out of nowhere, and I'm not even talking about like the Ohio State or Maryland that we're kind of saying are gonna fight for third. There's always one of those teams that's like in the middle of the pack that does better. Is that Northwestern again this year? I don't know. I'd have to do a little bit more looking into into their team and what all they have coming back and what they have replacing that's left. But because we're months away from basketball, so I haven't even thought about it. I'm just starting to get anchored into starting to get going on football. So,
right.
But it's gonna be an interesting basketball season, simply because you've got all these pieces coming back on Michigan State and on Purdue, and yet you've got some new pieces coming in that could make both of those teams a lot better.
Yeah.
And it could be something to where, a couple of top 10 teams by the end of the season, and it's not just accidental. You see this coming.
And I'll go ahead and I'll make my prediction now, but it's going to be a very loose, fluid prediction. So I'm not locking this in like I did last year when I said that it was going to be Maryland and Rutgers were going to be my dark horses. I was kind of right. I'll go Rutgers again for 2 times in a row. Why? Don't really have a particular reason why. Didn't have a reason last year. Why?
Did Mulcahy come back? I didn't even look to see.
That I don't know. That's why I said I'm not locking this in. It's very loose.
Oh,
I have
come
no
on, Tony.
true supporting data to lock that in yet.
Tony, you're no fun.
I
Don't
know.
take any sort of. So you think Rutgers is going to be another season of surprising?
I think so. Again, I don't know how far they will go, but I think it'll be surprising. You're not going to lock me in like you did Dalton with rooting for the Cornhuskers last year to take the West. I'm not doing it.
Well, it was, like I said, nobody will remember unless we just keep on bringing it back up. Nobody will remember you said it if it didn't happen, but if it did happen, you could hang your hat on that bad boy and just keep it going forever. Well, I did call such and such,
Called it on June 2nd, 2023,
right.
baby.
That's right. I'm just looking to see Terrence Shannon Jr. came back.
Okay.
Clifford Amore. Omar, I forget how you pronounce his name. Cliff from Rutgers is coming back. Omar Yuri, is that what it is?
Yeah.
And I don't see Mulcahy on here on this list. It's a vague list, but it wasn't just Big Ten teams. But I don't see Mulcahy on here, so maybe he did leave. I don't know exactly, but. So there are some players coming back to the conference that are gonna make the. Go ahead.
Mulcahy did pull out of the NBA draft consideration, so he'll
be back. There are going to be a lot of pieces that are gone. You have Trace Jackson Davis, probably will be an early first round pick.
Yep.
Same with Jalen Hood Schifino. He'll be an early first round pick. Howard probably will be as well, or at least maybe mid first round. The reason, that's one of the main reasons why I think Edey came back was he was projected to be a high second round, but still second round, and that's not a guaranteed contract that as guaranteed as what it does a first round, and that late first round isn't even as set in stone as the top 20 pick, and up. So I think he saw that, hey, what harm can one more year in college do when I can still make money? Probably make the same or more in college than I would in the NBA, wherever I'm supposed to be drafted or could be drafted. So financially, it probably didn't even make sense for him to go to the NBA because he's not guaranteed he'd be sitting the bench for a really good while, or he would be doing the same thing in the G League and still probably not getting paid as much as what he would be at Purdue.
Yeah.
That's not knocking the G League. That's not knocking sitting the bench on an NBA roster, but I think he has aspirations to be a dominant player in the NBA, and sitting at the end of the bench for 3 or 4 years doesn't lend to that happening. So if he can go make himself a little bit better, get his draft status a little bit higher for next year, he's going to be better off. It's going to have been a wise choice.
Yeah.
Plus I really do think when I was sitting there watching him at that press conference at the end of the season after the FDU loss, he looked like he was ready to stare holes. If his eyes were lasers, there were going to be holes in wherever he was looking, because he just was, you could tell he was extremely emotional from that game. And I think it was one of those that he took it personally and wanted to run it back just to prove that it was a fluke that happened.
Yeah. And I mean, for him too, you look at it, and I know you could speak to it more being a Purdue fan. It is a disappointment, because I mean, because of how great you did during the regular season, the personal accolade he got of being the player of the year, that's a hard thing to walk away from. Like, wait a minute, we lost to this team when we were supposed to go farther. And, again, if it was one of those that it ended on like a fluke last second tip in, if it ended something like that, that'd
be a little different. Yeah.
But yeah, this was just the total opposite. It was a meltdown, and it's like, wait a minute, we're better than that. That's not how, and I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to end my collegiate career with that being my last game if I had the option like he did.
The crazy thing is it wasn't a bad game on his part.
No, it wasn't.
That game was not lost by how Zach Edey performed.
Right.
It was the fact that the rest of the supporting cast couldn't hit open shots.
Right.
I think that will change. Plus, you're going to throw a couple of different players in there. I still think that there's probably room for, and I don't necessarily want this to happen, but maybe one or two more that could probably jump into the portal. I'm not sure when those windows open and close for basketball, but I would not be shocked to see one, maybe two more players from Purdue enter the portal and at least test out offers to see what they can get, because it is possible that they can return to the school. A player can return to the school that they were previously at. But Brandon Newman did transfer out. He went to Western Kentucky, and there's still a couple of players that I've heard some people say that Mason Gillis could be one that could maybe be looking, because you've got Colvin and you've got Berg. Then they both kind of take up the places of what Gillis does. Yeah. That's not saying that Gillis isn't going to be like, nope, I'm here for the long haul. We started it here. I'm going to be here for the finish, no matter if that means less playing time, whatever. I still think he's valuable, but there is a potential for that. Maybe a couple other players that might be that, but I personally hope not. As a Purdue fan, I hope they all stay. Right. I would love to have them all stay, but I totally get that if they decide, they can see the writing on the wall, and there's a chance that they're going to be the ones losing out to these younger players. Then if a change of scenery helps them, then more power to them.
Well, it hurts too when you're on a team like that. When you're on a team with the Zach Edeys, you're on the team with really all of these great players on Purdue. It's hard for you to really shine individually. And at that point, when you're, potentially looking at an NBA scout and an NBA prospect, a lot of the questions come up. How much of it was you being a great player, or you benefiting from being surrounded by other great players and being in a great system? So it kind of gives them an opportunity to not only not have to worry about as much as younger players uprooting them, but giving them a chance to shine in a new environment. And then really you get to evaluate, are you really as good as not only you think you are, but how good you were on the team? Or did you just benefit because of all the immense talent that was surrounded around you?
And what does it do to you if you transfer away and they win the national championship?
Yeah, that too. I'd be like, man, was it me? Was I the reason why?
And no. I mean, right. That would be the easiest answer, because, no matter who leaves, there is a lot of talent coming back in that would replace that. So you can't say that it was, well, since you left, it was a combination of what was added along with you leaving. Just happened to, the perfect storm happened to where, this team won a championship right after you left, and it happens that way. Yep. And it may have been that they would have won a championship even if you'd stayed,
Right.
you didn't play a part necessarily in whether
Hindering
or not
that.
they won.
Yeah.
It just would have happened, no matter who was on, whatever. But I don't know. That's speculating. I have zero idea, Tony, whether or not any of those are going to transfer out. But I do know that Zach Edey is coming back to play in West Lafayette, and watch out for the Twin Towers, because if Matt Painter wants to play 2 7-footers, think about that. Think about that. You put Zach Edey in the post, you keep William Berg out on the perimeter. They're both 7 foot tall. Where are you putting your guys to guard that?
I don't think you can. And if you do, then it leaves the rest of the court open for anybody to just take a shot.
And that's why I think that Dalton and I both kind of agree that it's probably Purdue is number 1 over Michigan State, only because of that potential possibility of Zach Edey returning. And you know what? Even if they did it the way they did with Trevion Williams and Zach Edey, to where they only have one of them on the court at the same time, you're going to have a 7+ footer on the court at all times, and they're 2 different styles.
Yep.
So it's not like you can just it's not like you can just put one big dude out there and be like, okay, take care of him. Yeah. Whoever comes out there. No, they're 2 different styles of player. Yeah. That makes them dangerous.
And it would be hard to study that too. Like, oh crap, I got to remember I got to do this for this guy. Oh, I can't do it for this guy. I got to do something totally different for him. So it would be a lot to have to deal with, especially if you are the one big man. Like, hey, you got double assignments, buddy.
How many times can you be big enough to man up against somebody like Zach Edey, but be quick enough to play foot, be quick enough foot-wise to be able to defend?
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, for as big as people are, and trying to really stop them and overpower them. I mean, how many times can you do that and not get fouled and then be out of the game?
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah, next year. The football season is going to be in the way before we get to that. Like, I'm anticipating this basketball season, and we still have a football season to play.
I know, and I'm excited for this upcoming football. There's so many.
I am too.
That's
the kicker. That's the kicker. Is I'm really excited about the football season, but like these things just keep happening with the basketball. Like Hunter Dickinson still is crazy to me. That happening is still just amazing to me. That he went to KU KU. Yeah, KU. He went to Kansas. I mean, he's going to play at Kansas, and then you have Caleb Love, who was gonna go to Michigan, decommitted. He's now in Arizona.
Yep.
The rich get richer on that, because that like Dalton and I were talking that Caleb Love would have not been necessarily a complete replacement to Hunter Dickinson in Ann Arbor. But he's the type of player that he can win or lose you a game just simply on how he's shooting that day.
Yep.
Well, if you go to Arizona, you have a little bit more in the cupboard. At least last year they did. Yes, they were upset in the first round to a 15 seed. I get it. That I get that. But they still have a bunch in their cupboard. And you're adding Caleb Love to it. So like it just makes Arizona much more, in my mind, much more of a threat next year than they would have been had Love still went to Ann Arbor.
Yeah. And plus too, like we talked about, last episode that I was on, Bronny James is going to USC. So how will USC be now with that? So
yeah. So I mean, it's this basketball season keeps getting more and more interesting, and that's why it's like it's really hard to like pull myself away, because I don't make it a secret that I like the basketball season more than I like the football season.
Yeah,
I love football, don't get me wrong, but I just absolutely love the basketball season, and having all these storylines start in June, start developing. That's still 5 months. We're still 5 months out.
Yeah,
but these storylines are developing already, and they can only get even more interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about football. I mean, for the most part, football for us ended, as far as the Big Ten goes, ended, back early January. So it's like, all right, well, this is kind of over. So now at this point, the NFL draft has happened. A lot of guys are gone, but a lot of guys are back. So, there's questions, but those questions can only be answered so much, even through spring games. You kind of got a little bit of a taste.
And then you have the portal that's still open after spring games. Now it's closed for non-seniors or something. I don't. There's some stupid. I want to say it was for non-seniors. I think is when the portal closed. Like you can't declare for the portal now if you're not a senior.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. I wish they would be a little more clear. Like, hey, not the portal window. It's closed.
Right.
And then, hey, the portal window's open now.
Right.
You know, not this. Well, if you were born on a Tuesday in an odd numbered month, you have until the 15th of the next even number month after your 17th birthday.
In the year in which, a president was elected.
Right.
So, yeah.
They make it so stinking hard that just say it they can or cannot leave. I mean, honestly, if they were more structured with that, I would be a little less upset with the transfer portal and the way that works, and because then there would be an idea of, okay, well, cooling off period. I don't think anybody should be able to leave into the portal a week after the season's done. It should be a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, take some time to think about it.
Actually, let it dissolve and let it cool down and have that point where, okay, yeah, it sucks. Kind of, well, shoot, there were a couple that were in the draft, pulled out of the draft, but they were already in the transfer portal. So like they entered the transfer portal but declared for the draft. Mm-hmm. And then came back and then transferred. UNC got one. I forget who it was. Right off the top of my head. But like that's why I'm surprised Hunter Dickinson didn't even attempt the NBA, because you could be in the transfer portal, be in the draft, and pull back. But I don't know. I don't know if he was given a deadline by the teams that he was considering. Like, we need to know, or we were gonna fill your roster spot or whatever, or this I don't know.
And that might be the big one, and it might be too. It's one of those for me, if I was in their position, because we've seen guys be great in college and then absolutely fall flat on their face when it comes to the professional. So to me, I mean, if I was a lot of these guys, unless I'm one of these handful that I know I'm great no matter what, and I'm probably going to be great going into the pros, like kind of like Hunter Dickinson. Stay and get your degree, get another year under your belt, be in a different system. So I mean,
I completely get him coming back. I really do. My thought is, why didn't he even attempt? That's the confusing part.
Well, kind of like you said, it might have been one of those like, hey, if you are going to join us, this is when you got to let us know if you're going to go in the draft or not. And I mean, it may even be like a Zach Edey thing. He may be looking at it like, hey, I'm probably not going to go as high as some of these other guys because of how much other talent is coming in around this time.
Right, Tony. But Zach Edey went into the draft to find out that he would not be drafted very high, and then changed it and then said, okay, I'm going back.
Yeah.
Like Hunter Dickinson could have entered the transfer portal, then declared for the draft, then decided he wasn't going to go to the NBA and leave and
then go to Kansas
and then go back, and he would technically still be in the portal and then declare, okay, I'm going to Kansas.
Right.
Why wasn't it even a consideration? Like, it wasn't, I'm going to the portal and then I'm going to think about my future. It's, I'm going to the portal. Where am I going next?
Yeah. And I mean, that may have been his thing. And we don't know. Maybe his inner circle, maybe somebody whispered like, hey, don't do the NBA yet.
Maybe
just go transfer somewhere else. Like we don't know.
Yeah. And maybe, you know what, we may be surprised. Maybe he has no aspirations to go to the NBA.
That too. Yeah. It may just be like, hey, I enjoy college basketball. I don't want anything to do with the NBA.
I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to go work my job or whatever. I don't think that's the case.
Right.
But maybe
it's a possibility.
I mean, who are we to know what's going on in that little noggin of Mr. Dickinson? But it's fun to speculate, but we will have plenty of football stuff. And actually, and if you're wondering, we've kind of gotten rid of the quarters and things since we've changed networks. We don't have promos that we run on a regularity, so we've kind of, until we get to the point where we're in a need of quarter changes or half times, any sort of break like that, that's when we'll bring those back. But we're kind of going to just go keep on powering through and just go to the next topic. This kind of actually does involve football, because we all know football drives the bus of everything in the sports world when it comes to money and things like that. So the news has been, and I don't know if you've been looking at any of it, Tony, but it's all over the place. Colorado has been talking very intense conversations with the Big 12 on them coming back to the Big 12, which is where they left to go to the Pac-12.
Yep.
They're in serious talks since Deion Sanders was hired as the coach at in Boulder. The Big 12 wants the Buffaloes back.
Yep.
What are you thinking?
Oh, I think it's going to happen. So this actually, one of the guys I follow on Instagram, it's CFB_plus. He gets a lot of hate, and he posts a lot of this all the time. Whether it's a board regent meeting for Arizona, which is going to be coming up,
which I've heard they've had conversations, not necessarily about a specific conference, but they're talking specifically about the urge to leave the Pac-10 or 12.
Yes. So
I would say it's probably the Big 12 that they're talking about, but they haven't, from what I've seen, they haven't been specific about what conference yet.
Right. So he actually did a really good breakdown. So the Pac-12 still doesn't have a TV deal. June 30th is the hard deadline for teams to either leave the Pac-12 or the Mountain West Conference. So San Diego State, UNLV, all of them, if they want to join. Arizona, to quote Dave Hickey, the Arizona athletic director, on May 16th, certainly the hope, who knows, wherever you print the result may be different than the hope, but we'd like to be with the Pac-12 and continue the great tradition of the conference. But if not, there will be a new landscape and new opportunity for the University of Arizona. As of May 22nd,
so they are talking Big 12, like they're mentioning names now.
ESPN is reported to be out of the Pac-12 Tier 1 negotiations as of May 22nd. Washington State put a temporary freeze for their athletic department due to reduced Pac-12 revenue. Barry Trammell says that a source in the Big 12 indicates Colorado is ready to commit to joining the Big 12 soon, as of May 23rd. And then Rick George, their athletic director, in a perfect world, we'd love to be in the Pac-12, but we also have to do what's right for Colorado. And at the end of the day, we'll evaluate things as we move forward. So to me, I think it happens. The chemistry is already there. And I know a lot of people have even speculated because, Prime is there. It may or may not be, but because of Prime. There's two things I want to kind of tie into this, and then I'll let you go, Sam. So there are other schools that the Big 12 is in deep discussions with. We talked about Gonzaga as one of those. Colorado, Arizona, San Diego State, UNLV, and UConn are also all schools that are likely candidates to potentially be part of the Big 12 expansion. Joel Klatt, I don't know if you listen to much of his podcast or not. He said something really interesting this past week when this was brought up because of all the smoke, because even they're talking about Colorado potentially going to the Big 12. This is probably going to be something we see a lot more in future college sports, because now it's going to be, what brand can we get to make the conference better, and or what brand can we dump to make our conference better if we believe that there's potentially dead weight going on. So to me, I think it happens. I mean, historically, it works. They're one of the original Big 8 that helped form the conference to even start with. Prime is there. They're already getting highlighted. I mean, heck, two of the first big games on Fox this season is going to be Colorado versus TCU and Colorado versus Nebraska. Two, to me, really good games that I know a lot of people aren't necessarily the biggest fans of. There probably are better matchups out there, but I think it's going to be great. And I do think Colorado goes because, if you remember when we talked about this, a couple months ago when we were talking about expansion, the fact that nobody has really agreed with the Pac-12 as far as a true media negotiation deal's right. And I think a lot of teams are skeptical. They're like, wait a minute, here we are. We're just 3 months away from the season even starting, and we don't have a new deal. What are we going to do? And we've got teams, jumping ship. We have teams communicating with other conferences. Like we talked about, Oregon and Washington have basically already been accepted by the Big Ten. It's just wait a second till we potentially get other people in. So I think it happens, because when I looked at it, they did a ranking. The Big Ten is earning the most. The SEC is the second most. The Big 12 is the third right now, and they more than likely will continue to get more when teams like Colorado and potentially Arizona or even others join the Big 12. So I think it's one of those that happens, and I think it would be good for the Big 12 to bring that type of big brand and honestly solidify them as really the third conference in what could potentially be two mega conferences.
I'm going to say this, and I totally wholeheartedly mean this. I think it will happen. Like you said, I do believe it will happen. But I also think that this will solidify that the Big Ten is going to be the better of the two mega conferences, because this is my thought process. We talked about it. I believe it was with you, and then I think Dalton and I also talked about it, that the Big Ten's waiting to do anything else with the Pac-12 until the Big 12 does something. Like take one of the teams from the Pac-12. I was looking in a CBS article by Dennis Dodd from CBS, and they're talking about as soon as Colorado goes to the Big 12, it will create a domino effect. What is this? A domino effect leading to the other Four Corners schools, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah, fleeing for the Big 12 as well. We know that the Big 10 doesn't want to be the reason to kill off the Pac-12, even though they kind of should be already blamed for that. But the Washington and Oregon have already been accepted by the conference. The Big 10 was just waiting for a reason to jump on them. Those four schools jumped to the Big 12. You're taking probably the second best program in the past 20 years in the Pac-12 and putting them into the Big 10. And taking one historically that has been a perennial contender in the Pac conference for a long, long time, my whole entire life, basically, with Washington. And we're talking the football programs. Not to mention that I've seen Washington basketball-wise make multiple tournaments and be in the Sweet 16, as well as I've seen Oregon, I believe, make it to the Final Four, if not at least a couple of Elite Eights. So like they haven't been just slouches on the basketball court either. But I think that opens the door for those two teams, and then it also opens the door to where all of a sudden Notre Dame realizes they need to be in a conference really damn quick, because the Pac-12 is probably, if that's a Power 5 conference that's being decimated. And will not any longer be around in the next 5 years. The Pac-12 will not exist. Especially with the news of Colorado wanting to leave very soon, if not having already not had conversations and saying we're just dotting the T, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Then the other three schools fall. Utah going back or going there, and then Arizona and Arizona State getting out of Dodge and leaving the Pac-12. You will all of a sudden have a Pac-6. You're not going to replace those 6 teams with anything even close to comparable. So then Oregon and Washington are going to go, hey, do you guys still want us in the Big 10? We're ready.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, to me, too, I don't think the Big 10 would, because like we've already talked about, they've already been accepted by the Big 10. I don't think by any point, if they reached out to the Big 12 too and said, hey, can Big 10 won't take us, can we join you guys? By all means, hop in.
And the difference, like I know the Pac-12 was talking to Apple as potentially being the exclusive, their media deal there. But what happens if people don't want? How active will people be going after Apple TV in order to be able to watch their Pac-12 games. I just there will be. I mean, there's always people that will.
Oh yeah,
but it's not going to be the same. We kind of talked about this last week with sports starting to go behind the paywall.
Yep.
And I personally think that it's a signature of death, because me personally, I'm at the ceiling of the ones that are tolerable to paying behind or going out behind a paywall.
Yeah.
You know, and getting separate apps for each one. Mm-hmm. I'm at the ceiling of that. I'm not gonna do it.
Right.
Dalton even asked, he said, you know, like, what game would make you go pay behind the paywall? And I'm like, I don't know that there is. I wouldn't pay for the Super Bowl.
No.
If the Bears were playing, maybe, or I'd find a bar or something that was playing it, pay the $10 cover charge or whatever, and okay, that's $10. It's not $75 to watch the Super Bowl. It's not that important to me.
Well, not only that, but heck, you look at people on social media. I mean, I don't know if you have TikTok or not. I can't tell you how many fights,
TikToks,
how many games, how many, streaming things just in general are played on live TikTok streams. Damn near watch it for free.
Yeah, well, like, even if they're not actually playing it, you can sit there and follow along and at least know what's happening in basically real time.
Yeah. So
but the point, what I told Dalton is what they should do is give the generic thing for free. Yes. So ESPN puts, just like for the national championship game, they have the regular telecast on regular ESPN. Well, then ESPN2 has the hover one where, the different camera angles, and it has all the stats, and, and then you could have 17 different aspects of how that game's being covered, and you could sell them off in packages.
Yeah.
Give the regular telecast, just let that be the one button pusher's dream. Mm-hmm. Yep. The older generation that just wants to click on and, hey, my ESPN is playing me football like it should be.
Well, and plus, kind of like you said, when you kind of consider that a death nail, I mean, let's be honest, with the exception of 15, 20 years ago, when USC really was truly relevant with Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, all of them, name me a time recently when you think people who truly watch the Pac-12 are tuning in every single week to try to watch it. Like that's honestly
what your diehards, but that's just the way that, you're going to have that anywhere.
But I mean, that to me is what kind of shows why the Pac-12 is in this situation to start with, is because to me, and it's no offense to the people on the West Coast. If you're watching this on the West Coast, please don't take offense to this. I don't mean this to everybody, but it just seems like
he talks about you off air.
Do not. Can't prove that. Just like you can't prove that I'm not Batman and I'm not Bruce Wayne, or Dalton. But
I know you're not Dalton.
Well, I know I'm not Dalton. That's a definitive. But I mean, it just shows that that's why they're in this situation to start with. Is, to me, the West Coast does not really follow West Coast sports follow college sports as much as they do really professional. And even then, I don't really see them being big professional fans. Like, you look at a couple years ago when the Rams won the Super Bowl, they had a parade in LA. That was a sad parade. It's like, oh, they won. Yay. No one cares.
Like, then the Cubs win in 2016, and they have the seventh highest congregation of humans in the history of the world.
Exactly. So, I mean, that to me just kind of shows it's like, okay, I'm not saying it's every state. Like you said, there's diehards. You're going to have diehards everywhere, but it's like, that's kind of what is the issue. And like you said, if I'm going to have to pay $75 to watch basically Stanford and Cal duke it out on what's left of the Pac-6, I'm not paying for that.
Right. And even if you throw San Diego State, SMU, I think I saw it was San Diego State and SMU are the front runners to fill in USC and UCLA. That is not a fair trade.
Nope.
That is not a fair trade at all. And that's not knocking on San Diego State or SMU, but they're not the caliber of UCLA and USC. They're just not.
Yeah, they're not the brand. They're not the history. They're not the caliber.
They're not the needle movers.
No, they're not. And again, like you said, that's no offense to them. It's just that's not what they are. If they would have, they wouldn't be in a Group 5 conference right now. That's just historically not who they've been.
Right. Well, we managed to talk a bunch about basketball, which doesn't surprise me. But we did kind of, it's all football driven. And you talked about the Big 12, thinking about UConn, and now granted, UConn's got a D1 school football team, but Gonzaga doesn't. Yeah. San Diego State, while they've got a basketball team that made it to the national championship game this last year, they still, football's their driving force, and they're not a needle mover. Like these schools, while they would be valuable on some front, I don't know that they're going to be. I mean, I think there's going to be eventually some basketball only college conferences that will exist. And it will be because the Big 12 couldn't pull in just Gonzaga for basketball. They needed a football team to go with it, and it just they couldn't find it. I don't know that makes a difference. It just doesn't, with as much as football drives the bus, I would think that they would want to go after a San Diego State over a Gonzaga.
Yeah,
because San Diego State has a football team, and it does perform in a group of 5 conference, but still it performs in a conference that is competitive. Yeah. So, and I don't know, I could be way wrong, but I would think that there may be some basketball only conferences coming up here soon.
And like I said, Joel Klatt actually talked about that, because he said to him it would make sense if you have an overseeing body in the NCAA that only focuses on football, and then you have a complete and total separate body that worries about the other sports of the school. He goes, because football is its own entity, it's its own thing, it's the money
as long as football still maintains and pays for what it normally does.
Yes, exactly.
Don't let it branch off and be its own thing and be autonomous.
Right.
You can be autonomous to the point where you do your rulings and all that, but the money that comes in is still spent the way it used to be on other sports, because there's no reason other sports should suffer because of football being treated as this untouchable conglomerate of whatever it is. So, but all right, well, that is good. We're running up on it, Tony. In our pre-show meeting, I said, if we run up on it, that's fine too. We don't care. But I didn't expect it. I thought it was going to fizzle out a little bit, and we weren't going to get here, but we got here.
We always do, buddy. We always run over a little bit. We don't have Dalton here to keep us in punctuality check, but that's okay.
So I'm gonna let you go over the socials and stuff like that, and and then I'll take care of the bottom part if you want.
Yeah. So you can find us on the TikToks, the Instagram, and the Twitters at B1G_talk, Big Talk. aka B1G_talk. You can also find us on Facebook at Big Talk, B1G Talk. You can put the underscore. You don't have to put the underscore. You can put pretty much whatever you want. You should be able to find us, and you should be able to find our fantastic logo. Or if you really want to go through it, you can search me, or you can search Sam, and you'll probably find us connected to a few of that stuff. So you'll find us one way or another.
We're also weekly through the month of July. We're on ASAP Network once a week. You can get the app at the Google Play Store or the Apple. What is it? The Apple Store.
Apple Store.
Okay, there we go. We have also changed networks. We're no longer with the Odd Pods Media Network. We are now on the Lounge Media Group. So we're still with ASAP. We still stream on ASAP, but our network outside of ASAP is now Lounge Media. So pretty excited about what's going to be taking place with Lounge Media and us being under that umbrella. I think that's it.
I think
Tony,
that is it.
Thanks so much for filling in for Dalton, who is cruising in the Bahamas, from what I understand.
Ooh, how lucky. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not totally upset. I just got back from Los Angeles about a week ago. It was like 60 degrees and overcast the entire time, while it's 80 degrees and sunny here in Indiana. I was so mad. I'm like, wait a minute. How is Indiana my vacation from California? I don't understand. But it is
on occasion it happens that way. Oh, so thanks so much for joining us this week. For Dalton Shetler, who is cruising around the Bahamas, Tony Hollinsworth, who's filling in for Dalton this week, I'm Sam Sprunger, and we'll see you later.